Hello, everybody. I'm Dr Nishitha, Assistant Professor, Department of English, Kristu Jayanti College, Autonomous, Bengaluru. Welcome you all to this great learning platform. Today, I'm going to talk about a very well known, a very famous story by Khushwant Singh, The Portrait of a Lady. Let's begin with an introduction to author. Khushwant Singh was a historian, novelist, political commentator, columnist, and also a social critic. He was a founder editor of Yojana and the National Herald and also the Hindustan Times. He was born in 1915 in Punjab and he passed away in 2014. Train to Pakistan, which was published in 1956, was the most famous historical novel. Some of his other works are Why I Supported the Emergency, Delhi, a novel, I Shall Not Hear, The Nightingale, The Company of Women, The History of Sikhs, and also The Portrait of Lady and other stories, the collected stories. Some of his highest civilian awards that he received were Padma Bhushan in 1974 and Padma Vibhushan in 2007. The Portrait of a Lady is a very well known story by Khushwant Singh. Some of the critics say that he wrote it in memory of his own grandmother. The description of grandmother here as a slightly bent, sturdy, diminutive, and silver haired and wrinkle faced old lady roaming around in the house with white garments and resting one hand on her waist and the other hand on the rosary beads, and how he compares his grandmother to the beauty of winter landscape is also something that you have to notice. Let me read out this particular paragraph. Uh, Please observe the figurative language used by the writer. Let me read it out. She had always been short and fat and slightly bent. Her face was a crisscross of wrinkles running from everywhere to everywhere. No, we were certain she had always been as we had known her. Old, so terribly old that she could not have grown older and had stayed at the same age for 20 years. She could never have been pretty, but she was always beautiful. She hobbled about the house in spotless white with one hand resting on her waist to balance her stoop and the other telling the beads of her rosary. Her silvered locks were scattered untidily over her pale, puckered face, and her lips constantly moved in inaudible prayer. Yes, she was beautiful. She was like the winter landscape in the mountains, an expanse of pure white serenity, breathing peace and contentment. And after this paragraph, he goes on to begin the story by saying, I and my grandmother were good friends. So that is how he begins the story. Mother did not approve the modern way of learning. She always wanted her grandson the traditional method of Gurukul system or traditional method of learning, the Indian knowledge system, but not the modern. She could not understand the scientific research or the mathematical calculations. She did not have any kind of interest to discuss any of these issues or topics with the grandson. So there was no common ground to continue the conversation between them, and that's how the bond diminishes very slowly. Their relationship strained upon moving to the city, is what I already said. As he progressed to university, their connection further dwindled, and she retreated into the solitary existence of prayer and spinning. So, this was the point where she retires to her own self and she tries to spend more of her time in prayer and also spinning the wheel. Other than this, the only one activity she liked or she loved to do was to put breadcrumbs to many of the sparrows and enjoy that particular evening with the sparrows. Some sparrows used to sit on her head, some on her shoulders, but she used to enjoy and laugh like a baby or like a kid, and she used to enjoy this. So this was the only time she enjoyed in the entire day. Other than this, everybody saw her praying. That's it. In between, the writer had to move to abroad to continue his studies. And even when his parents and the grandmother came there to the railway station to say goodbye to him, she did not utter a word. It was a silent farewell. And at the train station, she just held that emotion very tight. And he felt that maybe he would miss his grandmother. And when he returned, he was not sure whether she would be alive or not. But she was alive when she came back. And the way the departure or the scene that he describes, it was so emotional. It was just a silent farewell with just one kiss on his forehead. That's it. Again, she did not stop praying. She did not stop counting the rosaries. So this was her only work now. Her eventual passing, marked by the stillness of her lips, the gentle fall of rosary, a peaceful pallor spread on her face, is something that has been described very beautifully in the story. You should read it. And also, she used to feed the sparrows, as I already said, to ward off her loneliness. And that moment of happiness returned when she was lying as a dead body on the hall. All of the sparrows gathered, and usually, when sparrows, if you see sparrows, you would observe it. The sparrows would make a lot of noise, lot of chirping sound. But at this time, they all understood that this grandmother is no more, and they were all in awe silence. And that was the great silent reverence that they paid to her ritual. And the writer's mother felt that poor sparrows came for food, and she brought breadcrumbs and just wanted to feed all the birds, just like how the grandmother used to piece it up and feed. But the sparrows did not eat them. They flew away when the body was taken for the ritual. And the next day, the cleaner had to clean the floor or mop the floor. So with this, the story ends. So you can see how beautifully the relationship between grandson and grandmother has been described here, and how that the gradual uh, strain of the relationship, that is something that has been highlighted in the story. And instead of grandson, how she has a close bond with the sparrows. You have already seen how she used to feed the stray dogs. In the same way, how she's feeding the sparrows, how they come and take part in her ritual. So that is something that is beautifully described here. The sensitivity that the grandmother had. So, with his keen sense of observation, immense knowledge, and deep understanding of the complex web of human relationship, Khushwant Singh has reflected upon human relationship in his short stories. Like the portrait of Lady, he has written many stories which would describe this deep understanding of human nature. The story is used as an effective tool to emphasize the importance of relationship and the bonding and emotional quotient of such relationship in one's life. Here we come to the end of this presentation. You've already seen how the story of the portrait of Lady is very beautifully written by Khushwant Singh. It's all about the bond, the special bond that is shared between grandmother and grandson. As the child loses his innocence, how he detaches from his grandmother, and how grandmother had to retire to solitude and loneliness. To ward off her loneliness, she starts enjoying her afternoon by feeding the sparrows, and how those sparrows grieve for her death towards the end of the story. So, the story is all about this, and how grandmother detaches herself from the real world and retires to her own world, and how the sparrows come and give a silent reverence at the end for her funeral. So, with this, we'll close the presentation. Thank you all.